Great to hear. Great to have Wayne. Wayne, over to you. Just walk us through your role at GitLab. What all exciting things you guys are doing?
Yeah. So I'm one of the directors of engineering at GitLab and am responsible for a couple different feature sets of the product. It includes the secure set of features that enable users to scan their code for security vulnerabilities in various ways, both with static scanning, dynamic scanning, web app scanning, container scanning, and many other things. Also fuzzing, variable fuzzing. And then I also have the govern portion of the product that allows many things, including be able to view and working with the vulnerabilities found, to trend them, to mark them as false positives, to use AI to actually recommend fixes for those vulnerabilities, and a number of other features there. And then also features around compliance, so you can make sure that users can use it, GitLab in a compliant way, security policies, and also the authentication and authorization features of GitLab to make sure that users can authenticate and have all the features there, and then also can have the authorization of what they can do, and the anti-abuse team as well, which gives users the ability, both ourselves and our customers, the ability to detect abuse of the platform and then respond to it. And then lastly, the third team, set of teams, is the growth team that does growth hacking, as it's called, basically experiments to increase usage and increase revenue in the product.
Oh,
The
awesome.
team,
Yep. Yeah.
thanks, Richard. The team is about approximately 80 people, my team, and spread out all across the world. GitLab operates in many, many countries, and my team, nice thing about GitLab is we don't locate teams based on geography. The same team will have people in many different time zones. So that makes it a lot of fun to work with people asynchronously and just learn other cultures via working with people in other cultures in other regions of the world.
Yep. Awesome. That's amazing to know. And yeah, pretty exciting to have people from different cultures learn about them. And yeah, let's dive straight into the hiring process at GitLab, and that way we'll kind of uh, know what kind of questions you guys ask. What are the rounds typically? Let's start off with the typical rounds for a techie or a digital marketer. What rounds he has to go for when he's applying for a role at GitLab.
Sure. So the first thing is to look at the jobs page, the GitLab jobs page, and or our LinkedIn page, which points to the jobs page, and look for roles that you think you might be a good fit for based on your interests and your skills. And also looking at the handbook. The GitLab handbook is primarily open to the public, and there's so much information out there. So you can learn about the team, learn about the role. One thing I'd caution folks to do is, if you see job listings elsewhere, then especially our website, the GitLab jobs website, or LinkedIn, and even on LinkedIn, check the website. There's definitely some fraud out there where people impersonate employers, including GitLab. So go to the source to confirm. Then I'd say submit your resume, and a cover letter can't hurt, although it's surely not required to highlight anything specific for your role, and for the role you're applying for and your background. And then get ready for the technical interview based on the recruiters reviewing the resumes. The technical, and I'll pause after talking about the technical. So we do take-home technical tests. We find that, people writing code, candidates writing code in real time is not a real situation. It's very, very stressful on the candidates, and it's not what people do in the real world. So we send a coding test in the language that you say, whether it's in platform, whether it's Ruby on Rails, Golang, JavaScript with Vue, or Python. And then it's a real task that is, fix this code and make this enhancement to this code. And then you do that. You have a couple of days to do that, submit it to us, and then we review that and then decide if we should do a technical interview based on how the person does. In the technical interview, is about reviewing the work done and discussing it, because that's really key to be able to have those communication skills. It also makes sure the candidate actually did the test, not had somebody else do it for them, for example, or used AI to do it. Or if they did use AI to do part of it, they at least understand what the AI did. And let's just also discuss the ins and outs and the non-functional requirements as well. So those are the first couple rounds.
All right. The recruiters at GitLab must be receiving a ton of CVs, right? For every role in the tunes of hundreds of CVs, or probably less number of cover letters along with those CVs, but then that would be a humongous sum, right? And so, what are the kind of traits or what one needs to have? What kind of information must an applicant have in their CV so that it kind of shines out? And what should be the focus in the cover letter? Is it some kind of projects that they have done, or should the focus be on the tech stack that they work in? Or what's the secret sauce to get my CV through if I'm the right guy?
Yeah, it's a great question, sure. There's nothing specific that is makes it a slam dunk, or to really shine. It's a number of different things. So I'd say there's some things that are concerns and there's some things that help, but any one concern or any one big thing that helps doesn't make the difference. It's the combination. So in the resume, I would make sure, so some things that concern me when I look at a resume is typos. One small typo, not a big deal. Many typos, that shows a lack of attention to detail, perhaps. Readability. So making sure I can read it and understand it, understand the resume. If it's hard to read or understand, not just typos, but the wording, that is concerning. One thing that I encourage candidates to do, especially if their writing skills are not great, or their writing in English may not be as great as other languages, is use one of the free tools out there. There's paid and free versions. One is called Grammarly, that they have a free and a paid version. It's really helpful in looking at grammar, things like that. So we then also look at where the person is. We hire in many, many places, but not every place. And if so, we do hire in India, I believe. I looked currently. I know we have a number of team members, including on my team, who are in India, but it includes India. At least it did. I think it still does. And if somebody's in a country or a region that we're not currently hiring, that's something we advise the candidates on. In terms of things that really help, the knowledge of the specific things we're looking for. Like if we're looking for Ruby on Rails for a specific role, we look for Ruby on Rails in the resume. We do have people learn new things, of course, at GitLab, but we do look for the base knowledge and the things we're looking for so people can hit the ground running. We also look for experience in remote work, which if someone doesn't have that, that's okay. We'll interview for the propensity and interest in doing that, but that's useful. We look for, do they have a GitLab account? That's not required, but it shows interest in the company. We look for open source contributions, whether it's to GitLab or any open source project. Again, not required, but it lets us show, or it lets us see, an interest in open source, since GitLab is an open core product. And then also lets us review some work that may be public. And it could have just been something done in school that someone worked on themselves and made public. It doesn't need to be some big popular open source project. I'd say those are the primary things. I also look for what are the person's interests, not just what have they done, what do they want to do, is important to understand. And there's no wrong answer to that, but that's important to, I think, show a bit of transparency on what the person wants to do. And that could be in the resume or in the cover letter.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, the CV should not just be about the tech stack, their knowledge, but also about their contribution they have done to sources like maybe Stack Overflow, and other contributions they have done. That also means that people who are proactively contributing to the community, contributing to the overall growth of tech and digital space, are then the right ones to take forward. Uh, got it. That's great to know. After the CV has been shortlisted for an individual, right now, that person has received a tech test that person needs to give, right? What are the things that are expected out of that test? Like, as in, do you guys see the way the code has been written? Are the solid principles followed, for example, or maybe is the commenting proper? What are the key parameters that would be a make or break for that particular round?
For the coding test in particular.
Yes, the coding test.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. We look at knowledge of not just the changes, but the why on the changes and being able to explain them. And like at GitLab, whether a change comes, a merge request comes from an employee or somebody, one of our community contributors, which, at GitLab, everyone can contribute and do that. We have a whole process for reviewing changes. And the examples that we give for the coding test are changes to the GitLab product for a port in Ruby on Rails or, Python or Vue, for example. And we kind of go through the same kinds of processes we use for our maintainership process when it's an actual change that's being proposed to include in the product. So it's performance, comments, scalability, maintainability, that is really key as well. And we actually have those documented, not just for candidates, but for anyone who wants to make changes to the GitLab product, documented in our coding standards and our MR standards. And the merge requests do not need to be perfect, surely not, that are submitted, but they need to be good enough, especially also for the level the person is interviewing for. And often our roles are listed as multiple levels if we're looking for multiple levels. And if someone is at this level, feels they're at this level, but they interviews at that level and we're looking for that lower level, that's fine. And also vice versa. If they interview at a lower level and they're actually doing, achieving things above that, we can't always hire at every level we'd like to, but we'll change our interview plan for that candidate based on how they do, either up or down.
No, awesome. And now that person has submitted, and the team at GitLab has reviewed that, and you guys decide to go to the next round, right?
Mhm.
In the next round, the main logic is to see whether that person himself has done it, and how much he understands and the why behind it, right? What are some of the key things that a developer should know, as in, if I want to achieve a certain result in a coding test, I'll follow a certain methodology, and I'll get it done, right? But that may not be the only way in which it can be executed. That could be multiple ways, right? And you guys would be asking in the round as to why that particular path was chosen by the candidate. Is there any ideal path a candidate should choose, and uh, like what are the kind of explanations that you would want to hear in that particular round?
Say, often various portions of the challenges have different good answers. So choose one of the good answers, and how do you know it's good is be able to justify it. Test your changes, make sure they actually work. Think about the testability as well and the quality, and have good reasoning. And now the interviewer may have chosen a different path than you chose, than the candidate chose. That's okay. It's about being able to explain the why. And of course, the interviewers have a lot more context since they work at the company and they've seen hundreds or thousands of these. So they don't expect, candidates to know all of those things and have all that background and context. But it's being able to explain your changes, the why of the changes, having the information to back those up. So, if you chose to use one method versus another method because you feel it would have higher performance, for example, be great. Be able to explain why. Why do you think it'd have higher performance? Maybe even bring an example of different data, the likely data that would be used in that method, and why you chose one method over another based on performance, or yeah, it's things like that. Being able to explain them and explain the why you chose those things.
Yep, got it. Awesome. So now these two rounds are complete, right? The person sent their CV, that CV with a cover letter that covered the right things, their contributions in addition to their tech skills. Then they got the test, they took the test, submitted it, they got through this process. What happens after that, when the technical round is cleared for a candidate?
So the next step after that is discuss after the taking the technical test and then having the technical interview on Zoom is the next step is a system design discussion, which sometimes happens in the technical test related interview, sometimes with an engineer actually on the team. The technical test may be judged by somebody not on the team. Then we usually have an engineer on the team do an interview of the candidate. So then they can also answer questions about that specific team. And this is where we talk about maintainability, scalability, performance, not on the work you did in the technical test, but in general. So it might be, the famous or infamous, tell me about a time when questions. Tell me about a time when you introduced a big quality problem and what did you learn from it? Or and looking for communication skills, but also humility and transparency on those kinds of questions, and also understanding of the challenges. And then also, this is where earlier on it'll happen, or it comes into play, but also, especially here, is read the handbook. There's so much information that's public in the GitLab handbook. You can learn about the team, you can learn about that part of the product. Try that part of the product, since it's also a open source product that you can, and also a large portion of the GitLab is free as a software as a service, gitlab.com. Create a free account if you don't have one. Try that portion of the product is a great way to get experience with it. And then you can talk with the interviewers at the system design phase and also other phases in order to really ask good questions and show interest. And what I would caution is the handbook is enormous, enormous. So, don't think about how much time you spend on it. I would specifically focus on the team specific pages, the documentation on the portion of the product that the team you're interviewing with, and especially the GitLab values are very important as well to read about and understand.
Yep, awesome. That kind of summarizes it so much for the people. Just one quick note to all our audiences. So after a couple of questions are completed, we will also be taking the questions from the audiences, right? So if you guys have any questions, you can put it in the chat box. Our admin and the backend team will take it up and put forth the questions once a couple of other questions from our side are over, right? So feel free to put in your questions in the chat. And yeah, coming back to the process, Wayne. So yeah, once the system design piece is done, and yeah, amazing insights on how to leverage the GitLab handbook, which is so transparently available, which is once again an amazing thing to do at by GitLab. And you guys are very transparent organization, and the values speak. The actions that you do speak tons about the values at GitLab, right? And the next round, I guess, is about values that you would evaluate how the candidate is fit for remote work, and how that person will be able to sink in the existing scheme of things at GitLab. Tell us about that particular stage now.
Yeah, and this is where both remote work and values are discussed. So after the interview with an engineer on the team, it's an interview with the hiring manager and then that manager's manager. That's our process. And those are discussions about how a candidate is a manager of one, how they're self-led. Since we're spread out across the world and we expect people to, work very independently, you have to manage your own time and your own priorities, getting help from the team and your manager, of course, but how you're a manager of one. Also, asynchronous communication is so key. Communicate, it's a fancy way of saying write things down, and provide context when writing things down, because the people you're working with you may not talk to them very often, if ever, on audio or video. So getting it in writing is really important, and also being able to read those things and understand them and collaborate in an asynchronous way. Not that everybody has done that to the extent that GitLab has. Most have not done to that level. It was a bit different for me when I started at GitLab 4 years ago, but it's really the game changer for effectiveness. And then also the values is we'll ask questions around the values. Not everybody has done everything the GitLab way, of course not, including me when I interviewed at GitLab. But understanding the interest in the values and how that the candidates have exhibited the behaviors that are consistent with the values or are capable of. So it's collaboration, which talked about. That's a lot about remote work and asynchronous communication. Results, a focus on results. It's great to do a bunch of work, but we look at the results. We measure success based on results, not hours worked. Let me repeat that again. We measure based on the results, not hours worked, nor when people work. Efficiency, how to work things efficiently. That often involves a term that I find funny is boring solutions. That sounds like a bad thing, a boring solution, but it's actually a great thing. Boring means it's simple and easy to implement. When you don't need something complex, doing something boring is better. Diversity, inclusion, and belonging is really important to the company. Making sure we're treating everyone can be themselves at work, and we're treating everyone well. And then iteration, doing things iteratively is very important. You can make great plans in the future, but plans never exist. They never survive more than a couple months, if that. So we like to do things. It's great to create those plans to set a direction, but to do things iteratively. So talking about how do you do just enough for a minimal viable change in MVC in order to then learn from it, get it into production and learn from it to then know what to do next. And also transparency. Handbook is primarily public. I have a shadow program, for example, that I have people shadowing, and my shadow is actually joining the discussion today. And we do so many things transparently, and that's really key, so people understand what's going on in other parts of the company and also share information readily with the public and also privately inside the company. But talking about when you are transparent and when you're not. And hi, Jamie, I see your chat message. Thanks for being a shadow again this week. So we'll ask questions about that, and it'll often be, tell me about a time when questions. Tell me about a time when you focused on results, and what were those results you focused on and why. The other thing I talk about in terms of the whole interview process is the STAR method, STAR, which I don't know where it came from. It may have come from Amazon. I've mentioned it. I've seen it mentioned many times from current and former Amazon folks. It stands for situation, task, action, result, STAR. So when a candidate is answering questions, and I'll give them this advice, is think about, it's very hard to summarize all your work that you've done in the past. So think about, describe the situation clearly, describe the task you were given, describe the action that you took, and use the I words more than we words. We want to hear about what you did, not what your team did as much, although that's important, but we want to know what you did. And also then the results. How did you measure success? With all questions in interviewing, it's a great way to structure answers to really fully answer them and thoroughly answer them.
Yeah, no, lovely. That framework is really very insightful. Yeah, coming to the remote work piece, right? Where you speak about the concept of manager of one, right? Uh, in the interview, how can one